Irving Rivers died quietly in his overcrowded tenement. How and why Rivers had slithered off the mortal coil was an open question, but one that Detective Harkness was eager to close. Long before the SCP Foundation would take over the case, it was up to him to try to make sense of all the particulars. When he walked into Rivers' cheap pay-by-the-week apartment, the first thing he noticed was the smell of cigarettes. Interesting. It still smelled fresh. He made a mental note of that. It must have meant that either Irving Rivers had died recently, or the dearly deceased Irving had a guest in the last hours of his pitiful life. And that would be a guest that Detective Harkness would be very interested in talking to. Still, there was the immediate crime scene to investigate first. In that cramped, dirty apartment, there were clues to a life that had spun far off track. A lonely man, too close to his liquor, books, and cigarettes. Those damn cigarettes. Harkness couldn't help but notice that there were several ashtrays around the apartment, each one filled with stubbed-out cigarette butts. Did he ever clean this place? His actual body was inside the office, slumped over in his desk, poisoned by the looks of it, from the thin trail of blood-tinged saliva trailing out of his mouth. In one hand, Rivers was clutching a scrap of blue fabric like it was his last lifeline. In the other hand, he held what might be the only valuable item in the whole apartment, an uncapped Mont Blanc fountain pen. Was he writing something in his last moments? Detective Harkness decided to check his wastepaper basket, where he found a crumpled-up note. It looked like it had been written recently, from the beautiful, vivid hue of the ink. Perhaps it could offer some clue as to why Irving Rivers had decided to embark on an exciting new career as a lonely corpse. The note started with the scrawled words, "I see her everywhere, that sad blue lady." It went on, but Harkness found it interesting that he'd made multiple revisions to the rest of the note. At first he'd written, "I feel like I used to," but then crossed out "used to" and wrote in "should," and then crossed out "should," so that the sentence was just simply, "I feel like I know her, but I can't remember. I love her, but I don't know why. She's so beautiful and sweet and clear, but I don't know anymore. Her favorite flavor. Where did you go? I miss you." Harkness shook his head. Took the easy way out over a dame, a tale as old as time. He was already threading the narrative together in his head. Of course, this lonely fool had gotten in too deep. Maybe met a girl who was friendly. Made the mistake of assuming too much, thinking she was sweet on him. When little Miss Reality came knocking, as she always did, he couldn't handle the strength of her dose. A little belladonna or strychnine, and the rest would be consigned or likely forgotten by the pages of history. He felt the craving for a cigarette of his own, and looked onto the man's desk where, of course, another ashtray was sitting. All cigarette butts, telling the story of a man who had no control over his vices. But some of them were a little strange. Harkness smiled and cocked his head. He'd never seen blue cigarette butts before. Maybe a new brand, one he'd never heard of. "Hey, boss," one of the gumshoes turning over the apartment said to Harkness. "Looks like our boy Rivers was an artist, too." The cop had just opened one of Rivers' closets. Harkness strode over to check inside, and was genuinely surprised by what was waiting for him. Pictures, paintings, doodles, all of this, the same woman, all pasted to the walls and ceiling of the closet. Rivers was no Rembrandt, but he could make out all the consistent details. The blue dress, the short dark hair, the blue lipstick, the blue eyes. They were looking at a gallery of pure obsession here. "Put out an APB for a girl that looks like this," Harkness said to the cop. The cop looked confused. "How come?" "Because I'm almost worried her stiff is gonna pop up somewhere." Still, even if Irving Rivers was some deranged obsessive, he was dead now. It wasn't like any designs he had on anyone mattered anymore. Harkness filed his report, and that night he and his buddies were knocking him back at Garrity's, the local cop bar. They were laughing and sharing war stories about their days in the city, where crime and intrigue seemed as absolute as the sky above. "You know, people are always saying we should have had more empathy for the victims," Harkness began. "But the way I see it, we can only ever give them one thing, right? Empathy or justice. We decide to go all bleeding hard, act like every one of these stiffs was our best friend or our brother or our ma. We'd be too busy blubbering to get anything done. Detachment is key. We gotta be cold, not cruel, one of his fellow detectives, Lafferson, said. Harkness nodded. Exactly. Beautiful way to put it, Daffy, he said, a nickname that Lafferson didn't always enjoy. Let me tell you about this case I worked today. He relayed the story of the sad case of Irving Rivers, expecting the typical macho derision his buddies almost always reserve for a sad case like that poor SOB. But Lafferson in particular fell eerily silent and just stared at Harkness as he shared his recollection of Rivers' note. "Blue lady?" Lafferson asked, work-like seriousness flattening his voice. Harkness nodded. "Yeah, I figure it was some dame he was sweet on." Lafferson immediately started telling Harkness about a case he'd been working. An accountant named King, whose body had been dredged up at the harbor. No signs of injury across his body made everyone else assume that he'd taken a long walk off a short bridge of his own volition. If that was the case, a pencil pusher like this would definitely have left a note back at his home or his office. They were right, and when they found the note scribbled into the last page of one of his many ledgers, they made the exact same assumptions as Harkness. It read something like, "Lady in blue, can't get her out of my head, can't stop thinking about her. Her thoughts are my thoughts. Where did she go? Why does she feel such terrible sorrow?" "But it gets weirder," Lafferson said, seemingly upset by his own words in this bizarre new context. "His ledger was left open to the page with the note, right? But I decided to flip back, and let me tell you, the whole book, it was full of these drawings." Harkness knew he could finish the sentence for him. Lafferson opened his mouth again to react, then just closed it again and nodded. Just like all the amateur artworks in Rivers' closet, depicting this same strange woman. A woman who could seemingly drive men mad. A little detail came to Harkness's mind. "Your guy King, was he a smoker?" Lafferson could only shrug. Said he probably saw an ashtray in the guy's office, but there weren't any cigarette butts in it when he showed up. King seemed like a neat freak. What else could you expect from a number cruncher? Probably took his trash out a lot more frequently than Irving Rivers ever did. "But the pattern is clear here still," Harkness said. "If this dame is out there, what do you think are the odds that your guy didn't jump, and my guy didn't know about the extra something-something in his last drink?" The next few days were strange, almost feverish. He obsessively read through the reports on the King death and checked his own notes and photos of the crime scene at Irving Rivers' apartment. Those tenements are used to having tenants drop in and out, human refuse, and whether by death or rent dodging, they like to fill their rooms with another lost soul before the end of the week. It'd already be someone else's apartment now. What the hell was going on here? He damn near filled his own ashtray, thinking and smoking, pacing a trench into his office floor at the precinct. Who was this gal? And what was her connection to the two deaths so far? Those last two words surprised him as they glided across his mind. So far. What made him think that there'd be more? What made him know that there'd be more? He was frightened by his own certainty and worried that another break in the case would only come when there was another body, and that would make them all look bad. The last thing the boys in blue wanted was rumors of some lady serial killer stalking the streets under their watch. Luckily for Harkness, the next break didn't come with a body, just a phone call and a witness report. His APP for the so-called Blue Lady had turned up a possible lead, with a woman matching that description, at least in terms of the build and dress. A large blue hat was obscuring her head. Was seen walking into the lobby of an upscale apartment. Further interviews on site turned over the information that a cleaner saw that woman in the dress enter apartment C14. It was being rented by a successful salesman named Ray Keats, and when Detective Harkness paid a trip to visit, he found the door open. Ray was nowhere to be seen, but that was to be expected. If the heat was on him or his possible associate in the blue dress, it only makes sense for him to want to skip town and lay low for a while. Harkness couldn't be entirely angry about it after all. The door being left open meant that he could look inside, without going through the trouble of getting a warrant first. That was a relief, because Detective Harkness hated paperwork. On the inside, he found a relatively normal apartment, with none of the disarray of Irving Rivers' tenement tomb. Still, there was an eerie quiet to the place. something that had him reaching for the grip of the service revolver holstered on his belt. What was happening to him? He'd never gotten so emotionally involved in a case like this before. It was as though it was creeping into him, changing him. He needed a smoke to calm his nerves. His background research on Keats had taught him that the man was a bachelor, though of course that didn't mean he couldn't have lady friends visiting him now and then. He had the instinct to check the guy's closet, wondering if perhaps there was another drawing shrine in there, just like the one that Rivers had created. But no drawings. What he saw instead was a collection of fine suits, all belonging to Keats, and one brilliant blue dress on a hanger. It was like someone had just set a fire in between the folds of his brain. This must be hers, he thought. I know it. I just know it. She was here. This was enough for him to want to call in backup, but first he wanted one more careful look around the place, just to see if there was anything that he was missing before the beat cops trampled all over the place. If there was something here to find, he knew that he'd find it, one way or another. And what could be a better place to start than the man's desk? It'd been the seat of so many revelations in this case so far. No journals, no notes, no strange drawings. But when he opened one of the drawers, he found something that almost made him laugh. A pack of cigarettes in a blue box. That couldn't be a coincidence, could it? He picked up and opened the box, and there they were inside. Cigarettes with blue tipping paper. Just like the butts he'd find in Irving Rivers' ashtray. The words Blue Lady were written in block capital letters down the cigarette's shaft. Blue Lady seems to be the hottest thing these days, doesn't it? He returned to the precinct, only to realize that shocking news was waiting for him. They'd found his boy Ray Keats across town, dead at the bottom of an elevator shaft. Another lead had gone cold. It was maddening that there were 3 bodies now that he could somehow associate with this Blue Lady phenomenon. It was also one of the only times he'd ever let a case follow him home from work. On the drive back, he smoked one of those Blue Lady cigarettes he'd bummed from Keats's place. Not like he'd missed them now anyway. Decent flavor. It even seemed like the smoke had a strange blue tinge to it. And less than an hour later, he'd be found dead in the front bumper of his car wrapped around a telephone pole, his last thoughts all over the dash. Nobody would ever know what freaked him out and drove him off the road. When he looked up to adjust the rearview mirror, he'd seen the crystal-eyed gaze of the Blue Lady staring back, all because he smoked an instance of SCP-013. It took the intervention of the SCP Foundation to figure out what was really going on, that the true culprit wasn't a real Blue Lady at all, but an anomalous brand of cigarettes that manipulate the mind of whoever smokes them. The smokers would come to believe first that this enigmatic lady in blue was following, and later that they were, in fact, the very Blue Lady, until the knowledge of their fractured mind drove them completely over the edge. All 242 cigarettes that the Foundation knows about have been tracked down and contained, but who knows how many more are still out there. If you're looking for an excuse to quit, just remember this. Next time you start a cigarette, it might not be you that finishes it. Now check out SCP-347, the Invisible Woman, and the SCP Foundation's most dangerous female entities for more.